You know, grapes are one of the most widely produced fruits in the world, but yet they're often overlooked in the home garden, and that's because people think they're difficult to grow. But in this episode, I'm going to give you some essential tips that really work, so that not only can you grow this as a beautiful ornamental plant, but you'll get kilos of grapes for yourself and your family. I'm Tony O'Neill and this is UK Here We Grow, and on this channel we deal with all things gardening, poultry keeping and beekeeping. If you want that perfect garden to relax in, or you just want to grow your own nutrient dense food, then start now by clicking the subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified each time I release new content just like this. So the first thing to consider is that grapevines are long-term plants. They can live between 50 and 100 years. Selecting a permanent position is of utmost importance, one that can give future growth, because these plants do get extremely big. Now, grapevines thrive on slopey, hilly ground that is well draining. And if you're going to plant your grapes outside, then look for a slope south facing with lots of sunshine. It's really imperative to ensure that the grapes do well. However, this doesn't have to be the case. You can plant, as I have here, on some flat ground, providing that you get the soil conditions right for good, strong growth for the plants. Now, grapevines are very picky about the type of soil they grow in. You preferably need a rocky, stony soil that is well free draining, or even a sandy soil would be really good for them. If your soil is clay based or holds too much water, then a great thing for you to do would be to amend the soil before planting. Dig in lots of grit into the soil, and you could even turn over the bottom of the planting hole and add lots of grit into that too. This will aid in drainage. Now, they also like a pH slightly above 7, so again, amend your soil for this too. Avoid waterlogged areas, because that's not conducive to strong plant growth. Grapevines, as the name implies, are a climbing vine, and for them to be able to grow properly, they need a support structure. Now, whether that support structure is across a fence on wires, or whether or not it's a trellis work, something similar to this, or even a pergola like we have behind us, then you need that structure. It doesn't matter what it is. Now, we built this in a previous episode, and I'll put a link down in the comment section below for you to check that out. But something like this would be ideal. The grapes can grow all across it, you can train it, and you can also grow them up over the top, which will provide a shading area and somewhere that the grapes can also drop down as well. Now, like we have in the tunnel, I've decided to espalier my grapes, and I'm growing them along wires, which allows me to grow all up a wall, and then I'm taking those grapes across the top of the structure of the greenhouse, allowing me to have multiple vines there. Now, depending on the species of vine you are growing will depend on its spacing if you want multiple plants. If you're growing a US or European variety, then 6 to 10 feet is an ideal spacing between plants. If you're growing a muscadine, you need to be looking at somewhere around about 16 feet, because those plants are much larger. And when planting these plants, when you get them in a pot, then you need to plant the basal plate and the bud that's below the soil in that pot below the soil surface in the ground, and firm it in really well. Just leave a couple of buds above the ground and allow those to take off. It'll give you a much stronger plant. It will root well, it'll send out more surface roots, and you can then lead off with the buds that you have above ground and start to build a structure. Grapevines don't like to be heavily watered. They don't like the leaves and the fruit to be rained upon heavily or lots of water hitting them. So I take mine into the polytunnel in the UK. It allows me to keep the plants themselves dry, because that will provide what they need. But I still plant the plant itself outside, so that the roots can benefit from the irrigation of the rain, and they get the best of both worlds. We get all the water out here and it keeps the roots cool, but the vine itself that's taken into the tunnel can thrive. It doesn't get rained on because of the dry environment. The fruits are protected, and so are the leaves. If you are growing grapes outside, it's really important to net them at this stage, because that will stop the birds from destroying your crop. Okay, so after the initial watering, you want to ease off a little bit on the watering. You don't want to give them too much, because you want those roots to go down. Although they have surface roots, you do need them to get down so that they can get the nutrients required. But when you do water directly at the base of the plant, and this will be absorbed much quicker, and it will also prevent so much of the water evaporating by the sun. Now, if you live in a really dry area and you don't have much rain, then maybe a drip irrigation system should be set up so that it keeps the soil moist here. In the first year, you should not allow your grapes to fruit at all. You should remove any fruit, and also remove any vines that are weak and spindly, allowing the main stem and the vines that come off that you want to build your foundation, your structure. And as you can see here, we have our main, and we took off these which are woody, and everything else was cut off. During the winter time, you need to cut back 90% of the plant right away to the framework, so everything else will be cut right back, because the grapes will always come on the new growth that comes from that structure, but it's the structure that supports the weight. If you allow your plants to fruit in the first year, it won't support the weight. It's going to break and damage that plant. So when pruning, I'm going to give you a quick tip. You come in, you look from the main vine for your first set of fruit, and then take it to the leaf above, and then you want to cut just above that leaf. Everything else above that can come out, because all of this is no use to you, as it's taking energy from the plant itself, and this way it will provide enough leaf growth to give those plants or those grapes some really good strength. And you just literally keep coming through. So I got a bunch of grapes here, and I got a second bunch here, so we got one down a bit further and one here. So we'll cut that bunch of grapes off because we don't need it, and just above that leaf we will take that away as well. Now, don't waste these. These can be cuttings that you can use for improving your stocks, and simply just cut off the leaf, and you want to be able to go just below a bud and do a square cut there. Count up 3 buds, 2, 3, and about an inch above the third bud, do a 45-degree cut, just like that. Now, that can be pushed in right away so that both these bottom buds are covered, and that this top bud is just below the surface of the compost, and that will root and give you a brand new plant. Now, I have another video on pruning grapes, and I'll put a link in the description below. But when pruning, you want to take these right away back in the winter to the framework and allow the framework. As you can see here, we've just got a small little stub, and that's what we cut back to last year. And from that stub, we've had 2 new vines grow off that, which will produce grapes this year. So 90% of the plant will disappear come winter. You will take it all the way back to your framework. But getting this framework in place in the early years is the most important part of growing any grape. Now, if planting your grapes in rows, provide enough room for ventilation, because this can help with things like powdery mildew. It'll also help with aphid control, Japanese beetle and black rot, and these are the 4 main issues that grapes have. Other than that, these are pretty much stress-free to grow. Feeding your grapes is relatively straightforward too. Give them a high potassium food, something like a tomato feed, every 2 weeks, from the time they start to produce shoots right the way through, right up until the time that you want to start harvesting the grapes. When harvesting grapes, you want to pick them from different areas of the plant. You're looking for grapes that are plump and rich in colour and full in flavour when you taste them. grapes do not ripen when they're taken off the vine, so you must leave them on the vine to ripen. Question of the day, do you grow grapes? And if you do you have any further tips for the community? Put them down in the comment section below. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you've gained knowledge from this video, then you can subscribe here. And once you've done that, you can continue the journey by viewing one of these videos right here. I'm Tony O'Neill, this is UK Here We Grow. And remember folks, you reap what you sow. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.